So, look who is on the phone. It's Andrew Wood from Dan White and Associates. What we talk about right now is not necessarily the viewpoint of Forever Media, the radio station, advertisers, although I will say it should be, you know. So, Andrew is he's really super bright guy, works for Dan White and Associates. They are financial planners specializing in retirement income. Phillies were on the air at 1:30 on Wednesday, and usually it'll be Dan, or let's see, Dan Simon, Dan White, or Andrew Wood, or, you know, one of the folks there in Dan White and Associates who call in, and they'll give you a tip, a retirement tip on Wednesdays. But we had the Phillies. So I called and said, hey, how about a make good? So it's kind of like a rain date, only not the Phillies, but for Dan White. And so Andrew's on the phone right now. Andrew, thanks for being on. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Rick. I'm doing great.
Good.
Excited for the weekend.
So what kind of a tip do you have for us today?
Sure. So just one of the things that I came across, I've done a lot of work with Social Security over my years in my career. I think some of us refer me to as the Social Security expert in the office, and we all have a background of that. But I do have a.
I've heard that. And by the way, the question: are you on the speakerphone or a headset or something like that?
I am. Can you hear me better now?
Of course we can. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. I always recommend landlines, and as awkward as it is, I know it's more convenient to do it otherwise, but holding up, it really sounds better. Thank you. No, I've often heard either of the two Dans or somebody else say, yeah, Social Security detail, Andrew's a good guy to go to.
So, yeah, I do have an extensive background on that, but, one of the things that I've come across in terms of just expectations and planning for next year. There's three different things that really came to my attention and things that we need to be aware of. So, and this is whether or not you've actually started receiving those checks. But, the first thing that I'll cover is that if you think about what's happened with Social Security specifically regarding cost of living adjustments over the last few years. So, think about 2022, at the end of 2022, 2022, the benefits were up about 8.7% for cost of living. And then last year it was about 3.2%. Because of some of the numbers that have come out, the current projections for next year has us at about 2.63%. So, a lot less than what we've received over the last few years. So it's important to understand that, inflation, again, based on the numbers, are coming down. And that is certainly going to impact any cost of living adjustments or raises that you may get next year. So they're projecting about 2.63%. That is not official. We're not going to know that until later, but that's what they are projecting.
So what are the conversations that you have regarding Social Security? And I'll tell you, neither Trump nor Biden, who dropped out, nor Harris right now really want to talk about specifics. But the specifics are you increase the income level that is taxed for Social Security. Like, I believe if you just taxed everybody, you solved the problem. Now don't go spend the money on other things. They want to raise the age. That's so common, raising retirement age. Raising the amount of taxes. I think Harris has said increasing the amount of taxes people pay at work or on their own if they're self-employed for Social Security. But we've got a $175 trillion doomsday clock that's ticking right now. When you consider the unfunded liabilities of Social Security and Medicare, and they're coming up pretty quick. So what are you hearing about possible solutions to this problem?
Yeah, again, there are a number of them, and you know me, I'm not going to get into politics at least not on the air, but I will tell you that it unfortunately they just kind of go back and forth. They kind of put it against each other. They use it as a weapon, and that's both sides. I think the question is, how they're going to get it done. What's the best way to get it done? But you're actually leading me into my next point, which is that higher earners are going to lose more income to Social Security taxes. And basically right now for this year, the wage cap is $168,600. So that means someone earning, $200,000, for example, won't pay Social Security taxes on the difference. Mm-hmm. So if you're making $200 and they're only, taxing your first $168,600, and the difference there is not going to be subject to Social Security taxes. So that is one of the things they're talking about. They're using, $200,000, and then they're talking about having like a pause or a freeze area between 200 and 400, and then the amount above, and that's certainly one thing. Raising retirement age. I know that's certainly going to be on the table. Now, what I will point out is that, again, for this year, it's $168,600, but that number has gone up, and it does go up over time. And typically that has to do with inflation and wage growth. So what that means is I would expect that number to go up, just automatically pretty significantly this year.
But is it going up enough? I mean, if that's going to be the solution they look at, will that be enough?
Right. Yeah, and again, I think the issue here is that time is certainly getting shorter.
Yeah.
But what they're projecting is that with no changes, depending on the studies, it's 2033 or 2034 before they might actually have to cut payments. So I know it's not it's certainly not a huge amount of time, but they still have 10 years to kind of fight over it. So,
oh, I know.
I mean,
well, I was looking at some of the numbers over here, and again, we're not going to talk about partisan politics or anything like that. I opened up saying that no one's talking about it, and that's pretty much a truthful bipartisan statement. But you think about this, a baby born today is going to pay massive taxes into Medicare and Social Security over the next 75 years. But the government doesn't have to send that person benefit checks until they're 62, meaning the majority of payouts will occur more than 75 years from now. And I was looking at, Social Security is the easy one to solve. That way, just tax everybody. Boom, you're done. Let's go have lunch. You really can solve it that quickly if you have the political will to do so. But Medicare Part A, that's the hospital visits, they're going to have, they're projected to have $15 trillion more than it needs, which is not a bad thing. But Part B is the largest liability. They're underfunded by $99 trillion. So that eats up all that $15 trillion that Medicare Part A has in, excess funds. And forget about Part D. I mean, they're down like $22 trillion here. And Social Security needs another $69 trillion. Trillion with a T. It's to me. It's and I know you have experts that you work with who are experts with Medicare and Medicare supplements and all that. They've got to be looking at this thinking what a mess it's going to be and how much more it's going to cost people, because Social Security, we can sit here right now and say, all right, I don't have to be elected, so I can just tax everybody, But Medicare, that's the tough one, it seems to me. What do you know about that?
Yeah, again, it's tough. I do look at specifically Social Security, more often, but
right.
In my opinion, and I've used this example before, but I kind of look at Social Security being, at least in my opinion, too big to fail. Meaning they know they can't let it fail. But so what that means is they're going to need to get it fixed. And what's the right solution? I don't know. I mean, you could look at potentially using the general tax fund instead of having a separate Social Security trust fund. But again, that's it's kind of scary. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things on the table. Again, what's the best way? I don't know. But I do think that within the next few years they're going to have to get that ironed out. They can't wait until 2030 to figure that out. It's going to have to be over the next few years.
You're a pretty young guy, so it would not be too surprising if these are changed in some way during your life, wherein you wouldn't get full payment of your Social Security until you're 78 years old. Who knows? Maybe even 80. I mean, that seems the way that they're trying to work these things out. So how do you prepare for that? I mean, when you do that, and I'm asking you personally, too, when you prepare for that, do you just presume Social Security will not be there when you retire, or do you do something else?
No, I think, again, for me, I think it's kind of in the air. I mean, you look at, I turned 40, right? So I've been in this industry since 2006.
Yeah.
I turned 40 this year. I've been doing this a long time, but I still do have time. What's Dan's phrase? Is that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So I don't really look at that. I will be doing this for a long time, just to make sure that our clients are taken care of and things like that. But yeah, I mean, you got to prepare for it, whether that means savings, whether that means trying to build up additional sources of income, passive income, things like that in retirement. I mean, there's things that you can do, especially, for younger generations. But, again, even for me, when you do look at the Social Security figure, what they're saying is, if no changes are made 2033 or 2033 or 2034, they might have to cut payments to about 79% of what they were paying. But based on projections, they can pay that amount until I think it's 2093 or 2094. So 2094, I'll be long gone by then. So maybe, do you plan for getting less? I don't know. But, I do think that it's gonna be there, in some way, shape, or form. So I don't necessarily worry about that, especially for my clients that are typically, mid to late 50s, 60s, and even in their 70s that are getting the checks.
Right. Got that. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah, just one other thing, and I don't know if you're aware of how you qualify for Social Security, but you do need 40 credits, which is typically 40 quarters. They're increasing that number to qualify for a credit. So you need 40 quarters or 40 credits in order to actually qualify for any Social Security benefits. The income requirement per credit has been creeping up over the years. In 2024, it's $1,730 of earnings to get one credit for that year. You can get up to 4 credits in a year, but that number is continuing to go up. So, what you find there is that, individuals that maybe are trying to get some from Social Security, but haven't quite worked, for the 40 credits, it's going to be much more challenging, especially on any kind of like part-time work, things like that.
Gotcha. All right. Andrew Wood, just one of the brilliant people at Dan White & Associates, 888-690-8800. You can give him a call anytime you like. Just Google Dan White & Associates. He's in the Middletown office. Now, on Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, Dan White presents On the Money. What I want to know is this. Did he send you an email saying what's on the show this weekend?
Oh, I am prepared for you today, Rick.
Wow! All right,
it's the value of tax deferral. So he's going to cover some different options and solutions there.
Oh, in other words, investing on a tax preferred basis. Yeah, I've learned about that as well. Very nice, good stuff. 7 o'clock. Get a cup of coffee, whatever you want. A little nosh in the morning. Dan White & Associates. Dan White hosts On the Money. Andrew, have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Rick.